Good morning, everyone. Welcome. No?
Now.
Still not? Now. Okay. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Planning, Energy, Environmental Quality Committee meeting. I'm Irene Weiser, chairing the committee. Today is Thursday, October 6th, 2026. And
August
it is
6th.
I'm sitting here reading this and still said the wrong month. Let's try again. It's Thursday, September. What is wrong with me? It is Thursday, August 26th. August, oh my God. Okay, just take a breath, Irene, take a beat. Okay, Planning, Energy, Environmental Quality Committee meeting, Thursday, August 6th, 2026. It is now 9:33, and we're getting the meeting off to a very roaring start. Thank you all for being here. So I'll call the meeting to order. Is there any public comment? Okay, seeing none. Any changes to the agenda? I was notified by Terry Carroll that we may need to insert him into the middle of some other discussions so that he can get out on time. But I'd like to, if possible, review all of the land trust acquisition things at the same time and hopefully still have time for Terry. But Terry, you'll flag me if you need to jump in. Okay, thanks. So with that, I'll move on to the chair's report. And for the chair's report, minutes approval. God, what is wrong with me today? We're going to approve the minutes now. John Hunt is making a motion to approve the minutes. Do I have a second? From Judith Hubbard, thank you. Any changes, anyone? No, all right. Taylor, thank you for once again, a good set of minutes for all of us. We have to vote on it. This is like too much coffee. I'm sorry, you guys. I'm like really like jumping ahead here. All in favor? Thank you. It's unanimous, Taylor. Okay. Breathe. Breathe. Okay. For the chair's report, I have nothing new to report, but I would like to turn it over to Rachel Ostlund, who has a resolution to introduce.
Yes, so this is Doc ID 14225. The resolution is Contingent Fund Appropriation, Department of Planning and Sustainability 2026 Farmland Protection and Implementation Grant, FPIG, support to the New York Agricultural Land Trust. And all.
You're going to move it? In a second?
Okay, is there a second? John? Great, thanks. Rachel, want to tell us about this?
Sure. So this resolution would allow us to appropriate $2,500 from contingent funds to the Department of Planning and Sustainability in order to pay the New York Agricultural Land Trust for their completion of a farmland protection and implementation grant application for the permanent protection of 131 acres of Ostlund farms in Newfield and Ulysses. So basically, it's all laid out in the memo, but the New York State Department of Agriculture and Markets offers this grant every other year, and the program pays landowners to permanently protect their agricultural lands with a conservation easement that prohibits subdivision and development on the property in perpetuity. And this would just be a one-time payment or a one-time kind of impact to the contingency fund, and then from here on out, NIL would manage the land. So it would not be additional work to county employees. And I would say if there's anything that I missed, if Abigail wants to chime in, if there's more information that we should share.
Yeah, I'll just note that these applications to permanently protect farmland go through a rigorous process through the Ag Farmland Protection Board, and Rachel is the legislative seat on that. And the Ostlund farm was the #1 ranked application in that process, and we're lucky to have the New York Ag Land Trust willing to permanently protect ag in our community.
Can I just ask real quick? I'm excited about this, but why were they ranked #1? I just want to hear all the good things.
Yeah, so Ostlund Farms is a great regenerative farm. They've received many, many accolades for what they're doing. They're growing wheat. They are one of the primary sources of farmer ground flour, which is sold locally, and they only take regenerative wheat to do that. They also own the mill there. They mill that locally at their farm, and they provide their flour to Wide Awake Bakery, and they are like the test for all of that. So they've won a lot of awards. They're also working on transitioning their farm, which is really cool and has been a great example for our community. So Tor Oshner is retiring, but he's been working with Dan Gladstone for some time, transferring that farm. And so this really helps them in a monetary sense. They get a chunk of change from the state to permanently protect that, which helps with the transition to help Dan make sure he can keep the farm going.
Fantastic. Thank you.
And this is just a section of the farm, so it's a 1,200-acre farm. And like Abigail was saying, they grow wheat, but they also grow a lot of other different grains, and they sell those grains all throughout the Northeast. And yeah, Tor's, or the Oshner Farms, was also one of the owners of Farmer Ground Flour, and so they're part of the local system, but also the regional food system.
And John?
Yes, and I enjoyed watching the video that you included.
Oh, I'm so glad you did.
And they also rotate their crops and promote soil health. And in the process, they also are concerned about the bird population and other animals on their land. So it was a joy to watch the video.
I'm so glad you
And I'll just add, in addition, I'm sorry, Judith, go ahead. I'll just add in addition that their farm is on the farm tour this weekend on Sunday, coordinated through Cooperative Extension. So anybody who really wants to go see more, they're open for that on Sunday.
The farm sounds delightful. I have questions about the money. First question is, why are we paying $2,500 for this? I guess I don't understand the mechanics of the system. And the second one is, what do the agricultural landowners actually receive? It says the competitive program pays them. What does it pay them? Is it like a rebate on their property taxes like it is for usual land, conservation easements, or is it something else?
So I can say that the FPIG program, the Farmland Implementation Program Grant, I don't know, is a statewide program. It's been around for a long time. County Planning Department held easements for a number of years. We've now reached our max. We've got roughly 2,000 acres that Abigail has to go out and inspect, and it's a lot of work on county staff. So we've always been hoping to partner with the Land Trust, the Finger Lakes Land Trust, or this New York State Agricultural Land Trust. And we're, as Abigail said, very happy that they are even willing to take on farms in our area, but one of their stipulations to cover just some of the basic application costs for, it's a bare bones operation, the Agricultural Land Trust. So the funding would help to make this possible for this farmer to participate in the program. What the farmer gets, if you're familiar with the bundle of rights with land use, they're selling the development potential on this land, so they're getting compensated from New York State for that development potential, so that what New York State gets is that it's permanently protected agricultural lands with the focus on farming. And I was going to add, in addition to all these great things that the farmer and the farm is doing, you have to have a very high threshold of excellent quality soils for ag production for it to be permanently protected by New York State.
So I mean, the requested action is for us to pay the New York Agricultural Land Trust for their completion of the application, but it sounds like we're paying them for the actual action of doing the protection in perpetuity. Like, I don't quite understand what we're paying them for. Like, would we be paying for an application even if we didn't get the award? Have they gotten the award?
The first one. You're paying them to submit the application on behalf of a farmer in our community.
Does that mean that we don't yet know if we have received the award?
Correct.
Okay. That's not quite what I understood the first time. It sounded like this was actually going through, and it is not actually approved yet. We don't know.
My understanding is also that if it has gotten this far, and if they have accepted the farm, that it is very, very likely that they will receive, that they will get the protection.
And then is this something that should, in the future, not be paid out of contingent funds? If we're paying somebody else to do this action, it seems like we should plan that in advance rather than wait for them to do it and then ask for money out of contingent funds.
We discussed that, and this is the first time we've ever done it. So I think if we start seeing this as an annual request, that yes, we would make an enhancement request for the planning department's budget. Right now, it's really unknown whether we'll have farmers. This is only with farmers who are willing to participate. And, you know, my experience with it, farmers have to be very committed to the cause of preserving farmland, because it's a lot to go through to get the funding that will help them make this decision, but it's still a lot to go through. So I would say if we start seeing it as a pattern, maybe like 3 years in a row or something, then we should just add that to the planning department's budget.
And my last question, should this be coming out of contingent funds or should it be coming out of the Natural Infrastructure Capital Program? Because this feels like it could philosophically belong, like all the other land trust acquisitions that we'll be talking about today, as part of that natural infrastructure.
So this did go to finance and administration before I submitted it. And so they had also approved that it would come out of contingent funds, if that helps. That they both looked at the resolution and agreed that it should be out of contingent funds.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, it's a small amount of money. It just, if I don't quite know why it's coming out of contingent funds instead of the other program, which seems exactly targeted towards this kind of work.
Yeah, I would just say they are slightly different because of what you noted initially, that it is paying the New York Ag Land Trust for the application, because there is that little bit of uncertainty if it will go forward. But they have done a significant amount of work over a 2-year period to move that forward. And so in talking with administration, it was that it should go through contingency fund, because it doesn't quite fit the approved guidelines for natural infrastructure.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Discussion? All right, ready for a vote? All in favor? Looks unanimous. Thank you, everyone. Great. Right, next on our agenda is Administrator's Report. Norma?
Given the amount of time, what's on the agenda, I have very little to report, except that we have submitted the first of our very first time sending quarterly reports related to the agencies that are funded through the county in the budget process. So if you have questions, happy to try to address those, but you'll be seeing these quarterly reports at your committee meetings for each quarter moving forward.
That's great, thank you. All right, then moving on to the big package of things from the Finger Lakes Land Trust. If you want to come up, Katie, and we will begin. I just want to say there's a convention in the way that the resolutions get set up in the agenda. And that is to first put the resolution making a negative declaration, and then following that is a resolution to actually talk about the project. When we get to the full legislature, we do have to proceed that way. But here, we can talk about them both at the same time, and that's kind of how I'd like to proceed. But first, I welcome Kate from the Finger Lakes Land Trust to give us an overview of the work in these projects and what we're doing. Katie, did you have something?
I was curious whether, well, first of all, I'm happy to give my commissioner's report after Terry's, that's fine.
Oh, okay, great, thank you.
But I wondered if you all wanted a little history on the Natural Infrastructure Capital Program, or if you want to dive right in.
I'd be interested in a little
yeah, that's good. Yeah, kind of frame up
Yeah.
what we're
that's
doing
what
here
I
would be
figured.
great.
We
Thank
haven't-
you.
I don't know that a lot of you have talked about this program before. But the Natural Infrastructure Capital Program was initiated in 2017 as a way to consolidate the county's funding for land protection efforts in one funding source that would focus on ecosystem benefits provided by natural lands to help mitigate the adverse impacts of climate change. So while the impact of this program is hard to quantify, protecting forests and vegetative natural lands is a relatively inexpensive way to retain stormwater upstream to mitigate the impact of flooding downstream, as well as reduce the amount of sediment going into our waters. And obviously protecting lands in habitat corridors gives the plants and animals a better chance of success in a developing world and a changing climate. Since 2017, the program has helped protect 1,700 acres by contributing to local partners' efforts to purchase property or hold conservation easements on lands that the county has identified as important to protect. It is included in the county's capital program, and the funding comes from Interfund A, which you can ask Norma about if you want details. And the annual allocation to the budget has typically been $200,000 into this fund, but the contributions were paused in 2024, 25, and 26 due to budgetary constraints. Current fund balance is roughly $380,000, and if you approve these 3 projects today, the balance would be $285,000.
Great, thanks. Thanks for that overview. Does anyone have questions for Katie at this point?
Iris, do you want me to move? I'm happy to
No, but you know what we should do is transfer the name tag. Thanks. All right, so with that, I guess, well, why don't we, are you going to be talking specifically about each project, or did you have any overview comments that you wanted to give first, Kate?
So Irene, I'm happy to walk through, so I manage the natural infrastructure program and the planning and sustainability department,
Okay.
so I'm happy to walk through each of the projects, and then if there are specific questions, land trust questions, we can have Kate answer those.
Okay, great, thanks. I wasn't
No,
quite
you're
sure
good.
what the game plan was with Kate being here. All right, well, then with that, I'd like to first introduce a resolution on making a negative determination of environmental significance in relation to the resolution of 2026 on appropriating funds for Tompkins County Natural Infrastructure Program to support the Finger Lakes Land Trust Bergman acquisition to create new nature preserve, ID number 14187. So do I have somebody who will move that? Adam moves and Judith seconds. Thank you so much. All right,
Great.
go ahead.
And so I think what I heard is,
And yes, and we'll also simultaneously introduce the resolution 14188, which is to appropriate the funds for the Bergman project.
I think do we need to do one at a time for procedure, Taylor?
Yeah, so you can speak about them interchangeably, but we're not going to introduce it on the floor. So we have the first resolution on the floor.
And so
Okay.
I'm happy, I will talk about both,
Okay,
because they reference each other.
okay, great, good.
Okay. So this first resolution is looking at the negative declaration of, for the funding for this, but I will obviously speak to you guys about the second resolution, which it relates to, which is about the project itself. So this first one that we're looking at is the Bergman parcel, and so this is in the town of Newfield. The land trust is requesting $53,000 to protect 130 acres of land. And you'll see on packet page 59, our chart that kind of compares the guidelines of the program. And you'll see for the Bergman proposal, we've put in how this project meets that. And so that's what we do in our department when these applications come in. We review that and see if and how the project matches the guidelines that were approved by this committee, obviously previous to you all, but they were. And so you'll see there in the memo and in the chart that this parcel contains the wildlife area, natural feature focus area, which is identified in the conservation plan. It's located in an area of high habitat connectivity, wildlife area action 15. It has intermittent streams that have their 50-foot buffers on the parcel. And so I guess, does anyone have any more questions about this specific parcel? You'll see that, yeah, that conservation strategy action number 16 says protect and establish key habitat connections within holdings in Connecticut Hill, the southeast end of Newfield State Forest, which this one is, and Cornell's are not forest.
Yeah, Judith.
So I'm very supportive of this program. I can see how this connects nicely to existing protected land. My question is a little broader, which is Katie introduced this saying that these projects, one of the benefits is that they help our water system. You know, they reduce sedimentation, pollution, so on into the water system. It looks to me like this one is not in a location where it'll flow into Cayuga Lake, and I'm wondering if they're considering that the funds are limited in this pool, if we should consider whether there should be preference for parcels that are located in the watershed of the lake or not. And I'm open to discussion on that, but you know, given that the funds have been, the flow of funds into this pool have dried up, and the number is shrinking. There isn't infinite money to go around, and I just don't know if that's something we would want to prioritize.
Well, that's a legislative decision, obviously, but I just did want to point out that when the funding was paused for 3 years, the intention was to restart the funding in 2027.
Yeah. And I hope we can make that happen, but as everybody around this table is aware, the budget is going to be difficult at best this year. So, you know, hopefully we can make that happen to some extent, if not at the original number. Yeah.
Maybe, can you guys speak to the value, of this parcel insofar as, you know, Judith's comment that it doesn't flow into the lake's watershed, why it's still important?
Yeah, I guess I'll note the rest of the factors on there besides the watershed isn't specifically a guideline for this program. When we bring these forward to you, we strictly look at the guidelines of the program that were set up. I will say we've added, I believe it was a year and a half ago, those additional items in the guidelines that you can see under item 5C, which allow us to concentrate and make more projects eligible that do have an effect on water. That was a change we made for water. But specific to watershed is not a direction that this program has taken in the past.
And I would add that it also is an area identified for high habitat connectivity in one of the county's designated natural features focus areas. So that's the other part of the program, is the connectivity for climate change.
I'm not suggesting this be like a yes or no criterion, but maybe it should be sort of within the scope of what we're thinking about when we evaluate projects.
Okay. Kate, I don't know if you have anything further that you would add from the Finger Lakes perspective, from the Land Trust perspective, as to why you see this as an important parcel to protect.
Sure, yeah. Yeah, absolutely, and I think that the habitat was one of our primary focuses. We do work predominantly by watershed with a lot of the grant funding we get from New York State. In this particular case, we're looking at a lot of fragmentation, even within this conserved block of forest. And Tompkins County has lost a lot of its forest blocks, right? And so when you're looking at habitat, the edge of the forest of this parcel right next to Green Springs, which is a maintained meadow and a rare habitat. You have the edge habitat with grassland bird habitat, and then deep forest all around it. So it really is a unique property in that sense.
This is the meadow.
Mm-hmm. And we are working with Green Springs Natural Cemetery to establish a conservation easement, so that land will also be protected. And their long-term plans are to maintain it as grassland habitat as well as a natural cemetery.
Okay. Iris?
I'm looking at the map on packet page 61, and probably because it's black and white, it's hard to discern a little bit, but my understanding is the parcel that we're talking about is the bright white, and then there's these sort of darker ones which are existing preserves. But just to the left of it, there's like a square, and I can't tell, is that still private, or is that part of a...
That's the cemetery.
Oh, that is the cemetery. Okay, cool. That's what I wanted to understand. So this would just kind of help connect all of that.
Okay. I'm going to check in on a point of order, Taylor. So Judith has raised a question as to whether the committee should consider watershed that relates to Cayuga Lake. And I wonder, is that something we consider under the resolution that's being considered, or is that something that would be talked about separately under, perhaps a resolution brought to this committee or GO to further figure out how we want to handle that? Is that?
Correct, the later of your description. So if you're talking about considering making changes to the Finger Lakes Land Trust, my apologies, the County Natural Infrastructure Capital Program, then that would could be a resolution, could be, start report discussion, make suggestions, but that would be a whole nother meeting, another day.
Okay. But you're good with that. Okay. Katie, do you have something?
In past years, when the planning committee has requested changes to the guidelines, we generally try to work on that and bring something for discussion early in the year. So it'd be the 2027 guidelines, for example.
Okay, great. Any further discussion about the Bergman parcel? I see Adam and then Judith.
Just looking at it, it looks like there's been some clear cutting in the past, and I guess I'm interested in hearing a bit about the history of this parcel.
Sure. I mean, I'll fill in what I know, which is that it's been in a family for a long time. My feeling is when you're looking at the darker trees, you've got conifer, probably a plantation at some point. The meadows, I think, were maintained as for deer hunting, honestly. So there has been regular deer hunting on the property, even though there hasn't been a resident living on the property, and there are structures that are in really poor shape, kind of a house that needs to be demolished, et cetera. And so part of our looking to the county for additional funds is to kind of transition this from that residential property into a preserve. But I don't think that there has been a timber harvest having been on the property. The woods are young, but it doesn't seem to me like there's been timber management or clear cuts even, just maintaining meadows.
Thank you.
All right, Judith.
And would deer hunting still be allowed under the terms of the new land trust? Because I know that deer can be a serious problem, and we have deer management solutions in the county.
Yeah, so the land trust does have a deer management program. Not all of our properties are enrolled in it. Sometimes lands that are left to us with the stipulation that deer hunting not be allowed are excluded, but this would be, as far as I understand, included.
Iris.
I have a question just about the funds. Are these coming from, the $53,000, is that coming from something that's already been allocated for this purpose, and we're just deciding which parcels to spend it on?
Yeah, so this is the Natural Infrastructure Capital Program. It's Capital Program 8747. And so currently the balance of that capital program is just about $380,000. And so yes, that $53,000 would come from that existing fund.
Okay, and I assume, is that replenished every year?
The
Sorry,
funding,
it's my first year, so.
No, it's okay. The funding was paused to that program in 2024, 2025, and 2026. The understanding when it was paused was that it would be renewed starting this year, if possible.
Next year.
Sorry, in 2027.
Budget.
I see, okay. So
that
this
allocation has typically been $200,000 to that fund.
But hasn't been for a few years?
For 3 years.
Okay, so this is part of at this point, a fixed amount that we have. Hopefully, in the future, we will replenish. But are there other projects in the pipeline for the rest of the year that you have identified for these funds?
Yeah, so we have 2 more projects that you'll see today, and then
There's another one with partnering with the Finger Lakes Land Trust on a property in Newfield, adjacent to, actually surrounded by county forest lands that we hope to bring to, actually that one's going to go to Facilities and Infrastructure Committee, hopefully early this fall.
And so if all of those projects are supported, the balance of all 4 of those projects, the balance would be reduced to just about $200,000.
Okay, that's what I heard when I came in. Is it possible for us to hear about the other ones before we vote on this one?
Can you explain why you want to do that?
Well, if we have a limited amount of resources that may not be replenished throughout the year, there may, I may feel that I want to support 1 or 2, but not all 3, but I kind of want to compare them.
Okay. Point of order, Taylor, how do we handle that?
Yeah, so I would suggest if we're making changes to these resolutions that we withdraw all of them and we would do some sort of report or discussion item to talk about them all at another meeting, and then you would do you would consider the resolutions in the sequential meeting.
We couldn't just discuss each of the parcels before we vote on the,
You could, but we wouldn't do it with any of the resolutions on the floor.
I see, okay.
Can we withdraw the resolution for now and move on to the next pair of resolutions?
You would just, if you don't want to vote on this one right now, then we would just withdraw the motions and you would just continue discussion.
And then we could break
And then we can bring them back?
Yeah.
today. still.
Correct.
Okay, that's the question.
All right.
Okay, so we have Adam, Vincent, and Judith Hubbard. Would you like to withdraw your motion?
Is that friendly to withdraw the motion? Okay.
Perfect, so I'll just make a report section and we'll just continue reporting, and then when you're ready to put any of those resolutions on the floor, we'll introduce them.
Thank you.
And so, to clarify, should I now introduce the next set of resolutions, or we're just going to discuss all the parcels as discussion?
The later, we've got it.
All right. Moving on to a discussion of the next parcel in our packet is the Osadeki and Walding acquisition. Did I say that right? Judith? Saatchi.
Before we talk about that, can I just clarify the amount of money being requested for each project? Is that half of the assessed value? That's sort of what we can pay at most. We could offer less money per project if we wanted to. I'm just trying to figure out what the bounds are. I'm not suggesting that we would.
Most of these are not half of the assessed value. The land trust thinks about how much money they actually need to make this project work. And I got to say, they typically come in less than the amount that they could ask for these projects.
That's great. Thank you.
Okay. Abigail, do you want to talk about the next project then?
Absolutely. Let me just get my 50 pages in order here. Okay, so this is Saatchi and Walding. This is in the town of Danby. And so again, you can see that guideline assessment chart on packet page 74, which I do think is helpful. So again, that left side is the requirements of the Natural Infrastructure Capital Program on the assessment chart, and the right side is how the project meets the guidelines of the program. So this is the Finger Lakes Land Trust requesting $28,000 for the protection of approximately 86 acres. You'll see the footnote there. There's just a little bit of a deed thing there. As an addition to the Lindsay Parsons Biodiversity Preserve. So Osaatchi and Walding is located in the Forest Lands Natural Feature Focus Area. It contains National Wetland Inventory, DEC Informational, and Water Resource Council wetlands, as well as a perennial stream. And the parcel also works towards Priority Protection Area 43, which, as written in the memo, notes link the West Danby Moreno Valley, south of the Lindsay Parsons Biodiversity Preserve, to the Danby State Forest. Extensive wetlands in the creek corridor provide diverse habitat. In holdings in the Biodiversity Preserve also contain important smaller wetlands that should be protected. So again, that's a request from the Land Trust for $28,000.
Okay, any discussion?
This seems like a really valuable addition, connecting the Danby State Forest to the Lindsay Parsons Biodiversity Preserve, which is a lovely spot with beaver dams, I think. I think does flow into Kugel Lake. I mean, if we were going to rank them, I'm not really qualified to do that because I'm only just looking at maps, but this seems like it should rank very highly.
Any other discussion? Iris?
I noted that the other one had a lot more work that needed to happen, just demolishing an abandoned house, a barn, household debris, and 5 junked cars. Does this one also require any sort of preparation to make it ready?
No, it's ready.
Okay.
Yeah, and I'll just note about the program, what the Finger Lakes Land Trust is applying for is support for permanent protection. And so that's what these funds are used for, just to help them permanently protect. And they take the rest of that work on without the county being involved.
Okay, any further questions or discussion? All right, seeing none.
Oh,
let's-
sorry, I was just going to ask about trails.
Go ahead.
With the other one, I remember seeing it was going to create about 1.5 miles of trails. Do we have a sense of how much trail coverage would come out of this one?
There are no trails planned for this. It's adjacent to the Lindsay Parsons Biodiversity Preserve. There are a lot of trails, but currently we don't have a plan, and part of that has to do with the habitat. The focus of this property was protecting wetlands, and usually our stewardship team like to take some time and really get to know the property. Having been on it, it would take a lot of work, and I think we're cognizant of the impacts that has on wildlife as well.
Sure, thanks.
Judith?
Says you're requesting $28,000 to support sort of long-term efforts. How much does it cost to maintain a property like this? Like what fraction, it seems like it probably takes a lot in my, I would guess, but what fraction of the cost are you asking for here?
Yeah, and
And how does a number come up? Like how do you determine what to ask for?
Yeah, and maybe, Kate, you can talk in general about what's involved in that ongoing maintenance and
Sure.
protection.
Sure, depends heavily on the property. I know in this project, we brought most of the funds to the purchase of this property through a New York State grant called the WQIP grant, which is focused on water quality. As far as maintaining a property after the fact, if you're looking at a wooded property with no trails, maintenance is a little bit kind of more passive. We do post all of our properties. When you're looking, for instance, at the Lindsay Parsons Biodiversity Preserve, there are a lot of grassland, and we have to arrange for that to be mowed at a specific time to keep those habitats available. When we have trails, we have a lot of volunteer help, but as far as funding goes, I'm not the best person to speak to that. I do a lot of the front end, bringing in properties.
Yeah, and so you'll see at the base of this application that the Land Trust submitted, that the grant requested from the county will be matched on a 9-to-1 basis for additional funds that they'll need to raise to acquire the project. And again, that's just to conserve the land, not the fact that they will hold it in perpetuity.
What was that number?
9-to-1. It's on the bottom of packet page 75, the application submitted by the Finger Lakes Land Trust.
Yeah, I have some property that's not protected through the Land Trust protection, but through Danby Forest Land Trust. And there's actually, a bid involved in ensuring that the property is being maintained, that there's nobody, building anything on the property or destroying any of the property. And so there are routine inspections that take place, again, in perpetuity. There is some work involved even in lands that aren't being used for anything, that at least that I'm aware of, and there may be more. So I think next month, we're looking to have Andy Zepp, who's the director at Finger Lakes Land Trust, come and talk with us. And so some of these questions we can, unfortunately wasn't able to make it today. He was, invited, but wasn't able to be here. And so if, we have continuing questions, we can certainly put them to Andy next month.
I will just add, for easement properties and when we apply for grant funding for our own properties that we purchase and hold in fee simple, we usually estimate a stewardship endowment of $15,000, which is then invested and used over time to protect the property. And if it's a donation of a conservation easement, we ask landowners
provide some assistance in that. So this program is, essential in order to advance some of that where maybe those funds aren't available elsewhere. And working in 12 counties, I will say this program in Tompkins County is really advances our work here significantly. So.
Great. Other questions about this parcel? Okay, moving on to the last parcel.
Great, so we are, you can see the memo for this next one on packet page 79. So this is the Schneider parcel in the town of Caroline. So that assessment chart, which I do think is helpful, is on packet page 89. So the Schneider parcel, the land trust is requesting $13,425 for the protection of 18 acres that they will transfer to the Wetlands Trust Incorporated. We've seen a project with them like this a couple years ago. It went very smoothly. The Wetlands Trust is a local 501c3 that their work is that they protect wetlands. So the Snyder parcel is located within the 6 Mile Creek Natural Feature Focus Area, contains National Wetland Inventory, DEC Informational, and Water Resources Council wetlands. This parcel also works towards Priority Protection Area 26, which notes preserve the Thomas Road wetlands. This parcel is on Thomas Road. This large wetlands complex extends north into the Cascadilla Creek focus area. And so a majority of this parcel is covered in wetlands.
Any questions or discussions about this parcel? Iris?
Just trying to understand it from the map, looking at it, it looks like there's all along the creek is DEC wetlands, and then this is like one little portion. So was it not connected before? Or like if this will help connect it essentially, or protect the whole length of it? Sorry, I'm looking at packet page 91 at the little map inside the map.
Yeah, so it's hard that those aren't in color for you guys, sorry. So that potentially what is a white box?
Yes, a white box.
Was just the highlighted parcel. The entirety of that parcel almost is in that slashed line, which is DEC informational wetlands.
So it's just this,
Why does the DEC have a space that big in it? It seems so continuous.
This isn't, it's the parcel that we're referencing.
I think it's because it looks like the whole creek is, all along there is DEC wetlands, and then there's just this one parcel that was excluded? Or is it still part of, it's all
Still part of
considered?
it. It's just they highlighted it on their map to show that's the parcel that we're referring to.
Got it. So are some of the other parcels along that creek still private?
Yes.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. Good to know. Thank you. I just wanted to understand that.
Judith?
So this seems like it's a little different from usual because it's not connecting existing protected parcels.
That's right.
Is there a hope that this would grow into a larger protected area?
Very much. And we have, myself and my colleague have done a lot of outreach to private landowners. The difficulty with wetlands is that it assesses and appraises very low. And so the incentive to sell it to us when folks have it and just want it in their backyard is low, right? But at the same time, having a connected wetland complex or having the entire wetland protected would be ideal. And we have a donation in the works north, not connected to this parcel, but north, and we're going to continue to do outreach to the landowners south and north of this particular parcel.
Do you know if development is already excluded in much of this area? Because I know you can't build buildings within a certain distance of a stream for flooding reasons, right? So I'm wondering sort of what is the status of this land now in terms of development potential, and how would it change when it goes into a land trust?
Yeah, I can take a shot at that one. So actually, a majority of this parcel, there is a small piece that someone could develop on, though you can get a permit from the DEC or, a FEMA floodplain permit. You could infill, and you can do that. You can get permits to do that. So this will stop that from happening. But so building is limited on a site that is this covered in a mapping sense. It's also a concern, I would say, because it's very, very wet for the danger for folks. But yeah, being able to say like, no, there will be no building in this wet area, and it can hold and retain that water is a huge win for sure.
I can speak somewhat to the Caroline zoning that's passed that also has setbacks relative to wetland and streams in the town. I forget if we settled on 50 or 75 feet. So there's some setback that's required for that as well. Some of the parcels that back up to this, not along Thomas Road, but some of them are properties on Ellis Hollow Road that are extensive properties and farms that extend all the way down to Thomas Road. And there is the potential for development on any of those properties. And as that would happen, it would certainly impact the wetland below. So I'm very appreciative to learn that the Land Trust is looking to talk to property owners along this corridor to see what else we can do to protect it.
I'd like to speak to this project in general.
Yeah.
Not this one, but the whole packet. It seems to me like these are all a really great deal for county residents in that when something goes into a land trust, it's going to be maintained in perpetuity in a way that most benefits the community over the very long term. And if we wanted to do that on our own, we'd have to pay not these numbers and not the assessed numbers, but the actual true full market value numbers, which are higher than the assessed numbers by some number that we don't know what it is, and we would have to pay for the actual management, which would be an ongoing cost. And so if we can get that for county residents at a number that is less than half of the assessed value, as a long-term benefit for the environment, which is going to be facing challenges, for the people who get to enjoy these spaces, or just enjoy the results of having these spaces protected and the resulting wildlife. That seems to me like a real value and something we should support. It's going to be, I don't know where this is going to go in the future. The budget is going to be really hard this year, but I hope that when the budget allows it, we can continue to replenish this fund. And I'm not so worried about using 40% of the money for exactly what this program is intended to do, because there's no better use for it. So that is my perspective.
Thanks. Any other comments from anyone? Irish? Oh, question, sure.
Yeah, just a question around the fund in general. Is there sort of an average each year about how much we have spent? Can we kind of project? I haven't seen the budget yet for the coming year, but my sense is if it's been paused the past 3 years, I'm worried that it may be paused again this year. So I'm curious how much we usually spend.
Yeah, so that is definitely a hard one to break down because it depends on the parcel that is coming forward. It just depends on the assessed value and what the land trust or another partner might need. I'd say maybe $100,000. That's changed. We had a larger one that came through, so it depends.
Yeah, I mean, I can say in 2017, it was zero. In 2018, it was $28,000. 2019, zero. It depends on what our partners bring these to us. So it depends where there's willing landowners interested in working with our partners. In 2020, it was $32,000. 2021 was $150,000. 2022 was $127,000, and that included $111,000 towards the Bell Station acquisition to support that. Then we had nothing in 2024 and 2025, and now we've got 2026.
Have we spent anything yet this year, or is this?
No, this is the first.
These are the first projects we're seeing this year.
Yeah, and I will say that's why it was set up as $200,000 that would go annually and roll, because we knew that there could be opportunities that would require higher dollar amounts that were particularly important to the community. So that's how it rolled into a larger pot of money, and that's why, all that money wasn't used. I will say also that a decision was made in the 2025 budget to allocate $200,000 from this fund to support the Green Fleet program and another $200,000 from this fund to support green facilities. So it has been used in other ways than the program purpose over the years when budgets required that.
Okay, thank you.
There is there is an expenditure for 2026, though. There's 241,705.
Yeah, so the expenditures are also based on when the contracts go through, so it doesn't fully relate to the project year. But yeah, so there was, in 2026, we have vouchered out, but they received legislative approval in 2024 and 2025. So in 2024 was the town of Ithaca's Sage Preserve. That was 135 acres. And then in the town of Ulysses, conservation easement that was through the Finger Lakes Land Trust, and that was, so totals the $241,000.
So you can see it's up and down, and we can't really predict. And some years there's a lot of demands or requests for the funds.
Okay, great. So are there any more questions, discussion that people want to add before we go back to reviewing and voting on the various resolutions? Anything further from anyone? Okay, I'll just add my comments here that I too think this is a fabulous program, well worth our investment. You know, I think so many of us here in Tompkins County, and I count myself among them, you know, we're here in large part because we enjoy the natural surroundings and value the clean air, the clean water, all of the things that we get to enjoy. And that's thanks to programs like this to know that it will be preserved in perpetuity. But even beyond that, I can't help but think about the name of this funding, right? It's a natural infrastructure fund. And I think it's important to reflect on that these are actually a type of infrastructure that we could never even begin to engineer to do the work that they do of water purification and capture and flooding prevention that helps our ditches and our roads from flooding and wearing out. And you know, these are just such important, literally, pieces of infrastructure. And it's weird to think of it that way, but it also, these really do serve important functions, and not just for the recreation and enjoyment, which, you know, I'm happy that so many people here in this county do that. It certainly attracts economic benefit to our county because a lot of tourism comes as a result of the trails. So these projects are just beneficial in so many ways, and I'm really appreciative of the Finger Lake Land Trust's work to preserve and protect our county's beautiful resources.
We appreciate this funding. We really do.
So, all right. With that, let's go back to, Adam, did you have something you were about to say?
No.
Okay.
I don't have anything. Yeah.
What? You're good?
Getting really ready to vote, yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, with that, let's go back and let's see. We had Judith and Adam moved resolution 14187 on the negative declaration of.
They would need to do it again if they're gonna.
So I'm just going to ask, do we have somebody to move 14187 on the negative declaration of the Bergman property? Judith moves and Adam seconds. All right, any discussion? This is on the negative declaration, not yet the allocation of funding. Seeing no discussion, all those in favor? All right, looks like we got everyone. And then moving on to the next, which is the resolution actually to appropriate funds for the Bergman property. It's ID number 14188. I have a mover. Adam moves. Iris seconds. Any discussion? Great. All those in favor? Unanimous again, Taylor. All right. onto the Parsons Reserve, and first we'll move the negative declaration, 14189. Do I have a mover? Christie moves, Adam seconds. All right, any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Boom, great. Next, we have the actual appropriation of funds for the, I can't pronounce it, whatever, the Osachi and Walding acquisition. So it's ID number 14190. I have a mover. Christie and Iris seconds. Thank you. All those in favor? Oh, discussion? None. All those in favor? Okay. And moving on to the last parcels and negative declaration for the Schneider acquisition in the town of Caroline. First is the negative declaration, 14191. The mover, Adam moves, Judith seconds. Discussion, seeing none, all in favor? Okay. John, are you gonna get in here to move one of them? Last chance.
I'm sharing.
Okay. So this is appropriating funds for the wetlands in Caroline. The resolution number is 14192. Do I have a mover? John, are you moving? Adam's moving it. Do I have a second? Judith, thank you for the second. Any discussion? Seeing none? John has discussion?
I'll get involved a little bit. What I've been thinking, some of these things are along Cascadilla Creek and 6 Mile Creek and so on, and some of them are adjacent to farmland, but now they're definitely not farmland. Do you ever have the opportunity to plant trees in addition to what's naturally there? Because there are certainly some trees that are really good at capturing phosphorus. And even though farmers may not want to give up land along riparian areas to allocate room for trees, do you have the ability, opportunity to do that kind of thing?
We do when we have the opportunity, yes.
Thank you.
Great, I see John Negley sitting over there. John, I don't know if you want to add anything about Soil and Water Conservation District's role in that.
So yeah, we've worked with the Land Trust on a couple different projects on 6 Mile Creek, especially implementing riparian buffers and doing the plantings for the Land Trust, usually through various grant mechanisms outside of this program. So
Great, and you do that outside of Land Trust properties. You work with farmers on that, and
yeah, even
creek stabilization projects.
Yep.
That's kind of.
Yeah, I mean, we can basically work with farm, non-farm, rural, city dwelling, anywhere, so.
Good, great, thanks. All right, any further discussion? All right, so on our last resolution on appropriating funds for the land in Caroline, all those in favor?
John?
Okay, thanks. Very good, you guys. We got through all of it. Thank you for the good questions. Thank you for coming to attend, and for all of you for briefing us on this really important program. Thanks. Thank you. I see Darby moving into position.
Moving up. Okay.
Darby, let me just check in. You're here to talk about the stream corridor assessment?
Yes.
Okay. Let me, are you okay? Let me just check in with Terry. Do you want to jump in now, Chair? Okay. All right. Well, then, John, come on up, too. Can you just say that John was here for this discussion? Oh, you
And I'm
can
going to sing the praises of his staff,
You
so
can,
that's
you can
part of
listen in the
it.
big chair, John. We might have questions for you.
All right, so I told Tara it's 5 minutes. It depends on any questions you guys have. But Darby Kiley here today to talk about, and there's nothing in your packet. Okay, so you can, it's listening only, ears, because we are going to have a draft report coming up soon, so we thought we'd bring an update now so that you were prepared, and you'll still have plenty of questions, I'm sure, but it will be a written report at that time. So here's the update. We have applied for 2 separate $75,000 grants for what the state calls comprehensive stream corridor assessment studies. And they've started at different times, so I'll go through that timeline. And we started with 6 Mile Creek because we recently finished with a number of partners in the city of Ithaca as the lead, a drinking water source protection plan for 6 Mile Creek because it is the drinking water source for the city of Ithaca. So picture 6 Mile Creek ends up, down there by Wegmans, but starts in the headwaters of Dryden and Caroline, flows by Slaterville Springs and Brooktondale. The watershed also includes Danby, into town of Ithaca, city of Ithaca. And so there have been many studies on that watershed just because it is this really important drinking water supply. So we have gotten this, a number of different projects funded through the years. And since November 2022, when the Drinking Water Source Protection Plan, what is affectionately known as the DWSP2, was finalized for the city, we've been doing implementation projects. And in the consolidated funding application round in 2023, the state had a new category of planning grants under their non-agricultural, non-point source grant program. They shortened that one down to NPG. With the goal of doing these comprehensive stream studies that look for problem areas and opportunities for future projects, like stream bank stabilization, riparian buffer installation, floodplain reconnection, culverts, as well as flood storage. And so it provides, I think the reason why the county really wanted to get involved in this is to help with partners like Soil and Water and our highway departments have a tool that has already prioritized issues in the watershed and have ideas for projects. So we kicked off, applied in 2023, finally had a grant signed or the contract signed in 2025, did the RFP process and hired Barton and LaJudas, and that got started last summer. So they started with a lot of the existing data collection and went through and talked to a lot of the experience of Soil and Water and other partners of what's been the important areas, problem areas. We had a survey available for the public, and we also then we selected areas to do field work. And so that took some time to figure out where those areas they should be going to. We contacted landowners, and we were ready to go in like November last year, and then it snowed in like the first week of December. And it didn't stop snowing, and so that got delayed. So they really got going on the project in late May and early June and did the field work. So again, thank you to John. I think 3 of his staff came out. So they did 2 sets of 2 teams to collect the data. So there was a whole list of information they collected along the streams and the vegetated areas along the streams, so that then that all goes into a scoring matrix. And then from there, they can rank the projects. So they covered over 4 miles of stream area. I think it was 60 different segments, and we're now in this like ranking stage to boil that down into like high priority sites, and then from there looking at 3 concept plans. So the consultant will develop some concept plans that we can then apply for future funding to do feasibility studies and engineering studies for implementation. So it's been a really great effort moving along. And I would just say for the Fall Creek one, so that was all 6 Mile Creek. Fall Creek is they're really different watersheds. They're so close together, but there is a long history of erosion and sediment in 6 Mile Creek, and a lot of problem areas, a flashier stream system. It's a little different in Fall Creek, and that is bigger. Extends north into Cayuga County, Virgil Creek, which is this major tributary, goes into Cortland County. Did I say Cayuga County? Did I do that the right direction? So we have, even more partners that we're working with to look at those. And there's a lot more farming in the Fall Creek watershed. 6 Mile Creek doesn't have a lot of agriculture. There are definitely some fields and grazing, but there's several CAFOs in the Fall Creek watershed to be part of the consideration. So that study just kicked off in June. I think we're getting to the point where we do have a public survey out that landowners can fill in. It's posted on our website, and we're getting it into newsletters hopefully this month. And so they'll be working on the screening tool to be able to come up with the site visit ideas and get that going this fall. And then we'll be wrapping up into 2027. So what you guys can expect in the next couple of months is a draft report on the 6 Mile Creek project, and that'll lay out all the pieces, have the concept designs and all those pieces included in a draft report. We'll do that at a meeting. Still working on the exact dates and when that will be ready. So I'll take any questions, and I'll have pictures then, and not just have to use my hands.
Regarding 6 Mile Creek, I know in the past, in the vicinity of the police shooting range that is close to 6 Mile Creek, there have been tests in the past whether or not lead has affected the stream, and it has been negative. But I just wonder if there's anything new, or how long ago that test was done versus any new or recent data.
I think there is still a collection point as part of the Community Science Institute's stream monitoring that they do near that site. And so they did an evaluation years ago. I think it is still part of their program to be looking at that. And I do think—
So it's ongoing.
It is ongoing. And I think looking at there are some erosion areas in that location, because I know the consultant had to contact the manager of the facility before they went out, so they weren't in danger being at a shooting range doing field work. Yeah.
Judith.
So it sounds like what we will get from this is a list of specific actionable items with an understanding of what the impact would be of working on that, and maybe some cost estimate. Yeah. And that we can use that then to apply for funding to actually pursue those projects. That sounds fabulous.
Correct.
I'm looking forward to it.
Yes, yeah.
Other questions? John, is there anything you want to add?
I would just say this is very similar to like what we've done in the past with culvert assessments. So our North Atlantic Aquatic Connectivity Collaborative that has a grant opportunity to come in and do assessments of culverts. And so we did that probably 5 or 6 years ago. And then that helps us, even if it's not the recommended projects coming out of this project or program, it helps us go to an application, and New York State DEC now accepts the collaborative data as kind of bonus points to their grant applications. So similar to this, we can use this planning tool for other future opportunities and probably get us a few steps ahead of maybe some other applications at the state level. So.
Great. Great. Any other questions, Christy? No? Okay. All right. Great. Well, we look forward to seeing more, hearing more about this project. Having worked with John and seen a major washout at 6 Mile Creek, I think it's pretty important and pretty exciting. So thanks.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks. Now we have Terry and Haley, who are here to talk to us about the Climate Action Plan.
Yeah, so we're here to give an update on some work that we've been going through for the last few months. This is probably the first update of several, I would say, and focus mostly on kind of the work we've done to this point and a little bit of a overview of what we're going to be jumping into next. So Haley's going to start us off, and then I'll jump in about halfway through, and then we'll go to questions.
All right. Hello, everyone. As Terry mentioned, we're going to talk to you about the Climate Action Plan 2026 update. So in doing so, we'll go over what is a climate action plan. We'll give you some context. We'll talk about why we're doing this now, and then kind of where things are now, and then what our next steps are. So a climate action plan is really an opportunity to talk with the community and get them involved in climate action. It serves as a roadmap to help us develop actions that will help reduce greenhouse gas emissions. And really the goal is to talk with all sectors of the community to get input on this plan. So just some context. Our department is very active in sustainability, and so we've done greenhouse gas inventory since 1998, with the most recent one being done in 2024, which Terry has come and updated you all on. We also have had a couple different energy strategies. The first was done in 2010 and set a goal to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by 20% from 2008 levels. And that was actually completed. And so then in 2016, you might notice some familiar faces here. The first kind of climate action plan called a energy roadmap was accepted, and that laid out various scenarios to meet the 2050 goal. So since the 2020 goal had already been met, this was to reach the 2050 goal. There were a bunch of scenarios that were proposed and reviewed, and kind of ways that actions could be taken if certain scenarios were taken over. And then there was recommendations for the newest energy strategy, which took a little bit of a different approach. And so this was done in 2019 and really is how our sustainability department is set up currently. We have an internal focus of kind of Tompkins County ourselves will lead by example with our government operations, and then an external focus where we will support and facilitate community greenhouse gas reductions. And the big change with this energy strategy is that it took out the greenhouse gas emissions goals by a certain timeline and was just as soon as possible while remaining fiscally responsible. So this is kind of our guiding light now. And then, our work is not done. This is a screenshot pulled from the latest greenhouse gas inventory. So in 2024, Tompkins County government operations emitted 4,684 metric tons of CO2 equivalent. So we still have some work to do there. And similarly with the community side, 1,642,234 metric tons of CO2 equivalent. So there's still definitely room for improvement and reason for Terry and I to have these positions. Okay, so now we'll get into
a little job security for you.
Yeah. Not that we like to see that number that high, but now we'll get into why we're doing a climate action plan, and I will pass it to my colleague Terry.
Yeah, so generally climate action plans are revisited over time, 5 to 10 years, and so that last county energy roadmap is looking a little bit long in the tooth, and certainly the energy strategy as well. And so that's where we're coming from, is looking at updating those documents. But in the course of that, and as we were looking at what they were and trying to reconstruct them, we've really seen that the landscapes in which they were developed have changed quite significantly. And I'll get into that in the next slide. But I wanted to frame this as we're not looking at every single thing that causes greenhouse gas emissions. Right now, our primary efforts are around kind of these sectors, which are building energy demand, renewable energy generation, transportation, and waste management. And if you look at the next slide, this changing landscape, there have been a lot of things that have changed in these particular sectors over the last few years that make a new climate action plan even more pertinent and even more of a necessity moving forward as we kind of establish what our department and what the county should be working on. And so the first one, the CLCPA, stands for the Climate Leadership and Community Protection Act, passed several years ago and was a landmark bill that was passed in New York State and really set out a lot of guidelines and a lot of goals for New York State. And even though we've kind of slid back on a lot of what we were hoping from the CLCPA, some of it still stands strong and is a big change from when we started creating these climate action plans, the roadmap and the energy strategy. And so it's a big impetus for us to also look at what we're doing and make some changes as well. At the federal level, there were the incentives that changed, so the Inflation Reduction Act and then subsequently the One Big Beautiful Bill Act changed kind of where the funding was for a lot of these different climate actions, made some things viable, made some other things less viable. And so it's something that we're looking at again as we plan into the future. Our own policies have changed. So since I've come on board, we've redone the green fleet policy, we've redone the green building policy, and so for even our own actions and what we're doing, it's very different from where things stood when the original plans were put in place. And perhaps the biggest change is just when you look at the county energy roadmap, and this was something that Haley and I took a look at, a lot of what was done in that time was based on the science of that day and even some of the projections of that day. And where we've gone from since that time is just very different. And so we put together some slides to kind of show what this looks like. And so if you turn to this next one, it was talking about this EV market share in the United States. And so a lot of the estimates of that time were for, relatively slow growth in electric vehicles or almost no growth in electric vehicles. And although we've seen some headwinds, unfortunately, in these last 2 years, we are still seeing the share of electric vehicles rise faster than I think a lot of people thought was going to be possible in the mid-2010s and even the early 2020s. And I think the cost of these vehicles are coming down. We're reaching cost parity in a lot of cases, even without the electrical vehicle tax credits that existed from the Inflation Reduction Act. And so if we look at this next slide, you'll see that in New York State and in Tompkins County in particular, we've seen a huge rise in the number of battery electric vehicles in particular, but electric vehicles including plug-in hybrids overall. And so this is a graphic that I like to refer to. It's hard to tell in just looking at this static image, but if you ever were to go to this website, and it's right on the DMV on data.gov, data.newyork.gov website.
It's NYSERDA.
And NYSERDA has it as well. You'll see that Tompkins County really is leading the way in New York State, along with the downstate area, Long Island, New York City, and Westchester County, in terms of the amount of electric vehicles that are on the road. So even the projections that we see for the nation, for the state, are underselling to a certain extent how well our community is adapting and turning towards electric vehicles. And it's something that we're really excited to see, but not something that was expected in the previous plans. On the building sector, moving to the next slide, it's maybe not quite the same meteoric rise as electric vehicles, but it's also something that we're starting to see the turning of the tides, if you will. And so, in 2016, the heat pump adoption, the share of the amount of heat pumps that served as space heating equipment was around 45%. 2024, we topped out at about it was at 54, 55%. We've dropped down a little bit down to 53%, but it's still greater than 50%, which is something that was all a little bit unexpected. And I think what is more pertinent to this and maybe more hopeful is that the sale of heat pumps for space heating has been higher than gas furnaces, not only in this year and the previous year, but since 2024. And so that's something that, is starting to see this move towards electrification, this general trend towards electric heating through the use of heat pumps, efficient heat pumps, and away from fossil fuel furnaces.
Terry, sorry to interrupt, just to clarify, are these national trends, statewide trends, or Tompkins County trends?
Unfortunately, these are national trends.
Okay.
It's a little bit harder to pull in statewide data. With electric vehicles, we can pull statewide DMV registration data. When somebody puts a heat pump in their home, there's no statewide database that we can pull from. There's people that get the incentives. You can pull some of that data, but it doesn't capture it fully. And because there's not incentives for gas furnaces, we don't really have a comparison to be able to say, okay, this is how many people are installing heat pumps. This is how many people are installing gas furnaces. So for this, we've had to rely more on that national level data. On the waste management side, I would say the picture is a little bit hazier. Our current waste per person is almost 3 pounds per person per day. The goal is about half of that, 1.32 pounds per person per day. And this is something that is becoming incredibly impactful as we look towards what's happening statewide and locally in terms of waste management and closing landfills, and where are we going to be sending all of the trash and all of the things that can't be recycled. And so this is something that we're in conversations with the Recycling Materials Management Department about, and trying to understand what are the trends, where are they heading towards, and really how can we create some solutions around those. On a somewhat happier note, we turn to renewable generation in this next slide, and this is a place of positivity. And I think when you look at that original county energy roadmap, it did envision a Tompkins County that had more wind farms than we're likely to ever see in Tompkins County. It had more biomass as a source of energy and electricity than I think we're ever likely to see in Tompkins County. But it did in some ways undervalue the role that solar was going to potentially play in Tompkins County. And so it was done at a time when solar panels were 200 watts, 250 watt panels, and now we're seeing 450 watt panels be the standard. It was built in, those reports were done in times when we weren't going to likely see the level of community solar farms that we've seen since then, and the number of utility scale solar farms around New York State that have been proposed and have gone through the ORES process, the Office of Renewable Energy Siting. And so I think when you look at this particular graphic, you can see the growth from that time, from the early mid 2010s, and then into the later 2020s, late 2010s, and into the 2020s, where you can see that solar growth has really tremendously grown. And we captured this in our last inventory. Some of you might remember this graphic from the next slide, where we saw solar generation just in our county alone increase by 238%. And that was something that was not expected, but it is something that we are expecting in the next couple of years as we see things like Yellow Barn Solar, a 160 megawatt farm, come online. And so there is the potential for a tremendous amount of solar generation growth still to come. And then this next slide is a graphic from the Environmental Systems Lab at Cornell. And so we're working with Professor Timur Dogan and his lab to better understand what energy looks like in Tompkins County. And so this is a facsimile of a digital twin of the city of Ithaca, and we're expanding that out to Tompkins County as a whole to understand how energy is being used in the county, and trying to understand if things were to change, what would that look like, and how would that be impactful, and what potential policy decisions could have an impact on running different scenarios. And so we include this as just kind of a sign or a show of what we're working on, and how also technology has changed. I mean, these are tools that were never before available, especially to municipalities like our own, and increasingly are becoming available to us. And so we're super excited to work with them, and super excited about what this can mean for the Climate Action Plan as a whole, as it's something that's not really been done in a lot of places across the country. And so this last slide is really, as we look towards the future, we've been working on crunching some data, trying to understand where we're at and what the trends are moving forward. But a core piece is what Haley said at the beginning when it comes to climate action plans. It's hearing from the community of what's important to them. And so we're working on developing our outreach strategy. It'll be multifaceted. It won't just be online. It won't just be in person. It won't be focus groups or events. It'll be a mixture of all of the above. And I think a big change that we're trying to move towards is making it a person or people-centered approach. And so typically the way these things have been done in the past is you'll have somebody come and they'll say, hey, what would you like your government to do? What would you like Tompkins County to do when it comes to climate action? And I think it's a really hard question for somebody that isn't in government or isn't a legislator, doesn't have that familiarity to say, I want my government to do this, because quite frankly, a lot of people don't know what government can and can't do. And so instead of asking them a question in a way that doesn't really lead to informative answers, we want to ask them questions that they can answer. We want to ask them about their lived experiences. And so we want to ask them, how does climate change make you feel? What do you think of? How is it impacting you? How do you think it will impact you? What do you want to do about it? What's stopping you from doing these things? And we think that the answers to those questions can be used to inform our own approaches, and so that we can take that, we can glean that, and we can synthesize it into actions that can say, hey, from the community, we're hearing that they're worried about X. County can do Y to support that. Or we're hearing that this is a major barrier. What can we do in order to help people overcome those barriers? And so what you'll see over the next couple of months is Haley and I reaching out to different groups, reaching out to different people. You'll see a website we're working with Monica to put together to provide updates on this process, but to provide ways for people to get in touch with us, and so that we can talk about it and we can have these conversations and we can really start to hear from the community. And so we're really excited to jump into this next stage. I'm sure you'll be hearing from us. Some of you that serve on our different advisory boards or that are liaisons to these boards, you'll hear about this. So Adam, you'll probably hear about this at CASE next week. And for the rest of you that are part of other advisory boards, you're likely to see us as well. So yeah, we're happy to take any questions on all of this.
John and Iris, then.
I just have a related question, especially to community engagement. You've probably been engaged in that for some time before this new effort. Do you have some sense of people in Tompkins County that you've interacted with, what percentage of climate deniers there are, people, that don't believe people have affected climate change over time?
Yeah, so there's Yale University has a great resource tool for this that, I think periodically, I don't actually know how they gather this data. I haven't looked at it in a couple of years, but they've been able to track over time kind of how people feel about climate change, if they're worried about it, if it's a priority. And consistently, Tompkins County amongst New York State has served as a bastion of belief in climate change and climate action. I don't know how that has changed over the last couple of years since I last looked at the tool. I think the last time I looked, it was like 86% of people in Tompkins County believed in climate change. So it was a pretty high number. 86, 76, somewhere around there. There was a 6, I believe. Far higher than I would say some of the surrounding counties around us and some other parts of upstate New York. But part of this process is also to hear from those people, right? I think we don't kid ourselves. We know that people don't necessarily believe in climate change, but just as much as the denial in climate change is the apathy, I think that some people that even if they do believe that it is a major issue, their belief that they can't make a difference or that county government can't make a difference or that no one can make a difference. And that's something that, I don't want to go into this process with preconceived ideas of what people are going to say. But it is something that I think we expect to hear and quite frankly, we want to hear and want to hear why they feel that way.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm curious about the target of 80% below 2008 levels by 2050, and if you think that there's a need to update that to be more aggressive?
So that was the goal in the original energy strategy in 2010, and then the scenarios were laid out in the energy roadmap. In 2019, when the energy strategy was updated, it was the idea that it wasn't aggressive enough, and so that's where we've moved away from having a temporal base goal. So we don't say, oh, we're trying to reduce emissions by a certain date. What we're trying to do now is reduce emissions as much as possible, as quickly as possible, while remaining fiscally responsible. And so it's a little bit more nebulous. It's not exactly what other people do. We're Ithaca, Tompkins County, we're a little weird and do things differently. And it has its positives and negatives, but that is kind of the current mantra that we operate under.
Okay. And then in terms of, I'm interested in the waste management piece. Is the data you listed specific to Tompkins County, the 2.96 pounds?
Yes. Yep. So I had conversations with Recycling Materials Management, and that's their current number and then where they're trying to get to.
Okay. I'm curious, if you are going to want to work with us too on thinking about ways to address that, whether, I know there's a whole zero waste, Tompkins movement, thinking about having municipal composting, curbside pickup, that kind of thing, or countywide single-use plastics ban, that kind of thing. Is that the kind of stuff, or is it more that there's like large electronics people are throwing out and they don't really know what to do with? Or is it a mix of all of that?
I think it could be all of the above. Like that's kind of the feedback we're looking to hear.
Okay. And then last subject area, I could go on, but I'll try not to, was around the solar generation, seeing that we've exceeded our projections and done a lot, which is great. But obviously the sun doesn't shine here for many months as much as it does in other months. And I'm curious if there's also an emphasis on battery storage or other ways to kind of help us when the sun is not shining.
Yeah, it's certainly something that we'll look into. I would say that this isn't, the technology changes of what was known and envisioned in 2014, 2016 when the roadmap was being put together is, very different from the place that we are today. I think the difficulty that we're seeing with battery storage in our particular region right now is that the rates to the incentive essentially to use battery energy storage in the NISEG territory isn't necessarily conducive to seeing a lot of these things be put into place. And I think that's something that has to be changed. And I think, unfortunately, some of this drive towards the data centers will see some of that change. I think there's just a greater concern over energy demand in general. And so it might not be forced from this need to try and have 24/7 renewable generation. It might be forced more from the data centers and the idea of energy conservation and not pulling too much from an aging infrastructure grid. But I do think it's something that'll happen, and it's something that we're actively taking a look at.
Thanks.
As Recycling Materials, the RMM department reports to facilities and infrastructure, and what I've heard them talk about as primary targets for waste reduction are food. Right now, food is a large share of the waste stream that they think is something that can be avoided. So they've started this temporary initiative in downtown to collect food curbside, and they're hoping to expand it. I think it's not always obvious how, but I think it's going quite well. And then I've also heard them talk about producer responsibility, which would require a state law making the producers of packaging material responsible for providing a way to manage that waste, because a lot of the stuff that comes in is stuff that it feels like it should be recyclable, but it's not really, like black plastics, or it's plastics that are not recyclable, or it's excess packaging that could just not be used at all. And without that state law, they still have all this material in the waste stream. And maybe that's something we could consider a resolution in support of a state law at some point here. I think that would align.
We actually had those in the past. The producer responsibility bill was part of our set of resolutions we passed earlier in this year, and we passed it the year before that. And,
not let it fall off of our radar.
No, it's absolutely, it's been quite a fight in Albany. The industry has their producers who don't want to quite take real responsibility and are looking for chemical processes and other ways to so-called manage it that really isn't managing it. It's just turning it into some other toxic, wasteful form.
I am very interested in this idea of asking questions that actually give you meaningful answers. Certainly I've seen in local discussion boards, people asking, how, if I want to put on solar on my house, how do I actually do it? Who should I go to? What companies are reliable and aren't just starting right now, so I don't know if they're going to stick around if there are problems. And I think the conclusion people came to in the discussion I saw is that there aren't enough people to fill the demand that exists at this point at the level that people trust them. And maybe that's something that we could support. I also wanted to mention there's a woman called Catherine Hayhoe, who's a professor in Texas, who focuses on communicating with people about climate in a way, like who should we be trying to communicate with? Like who is actually open to a discussion where there's going to be meaningful dialogue and where minds might be changed? Who is not going to be open to that, and how do you tell? Like, where are you wasting your time? And then how do you move those discussions forward when people are coming, like their ideas about the science might be different, but they might have shared values that allow them to come to a consensus that makes meaningful progress. So she had some guidance on how to hold these discussions and examples, and she's done a lot of work in this space, so it might be worth looking at her.
Catherine Hayhoe?
Catherine Hayhoe, she's a professor in Texas.
Okay, we'll take a look. Thank you.
This is, again, it's really important work. It's a lot of effort into it, and a lot of really good thinking, right? To both of you. I just kudos to the way that you are approaching it in a way that will help bring meaningful results. I think one of the biggest challenges is, as you described, so many things keep changing. Right? And so it's hard to know, how to set, I guess the goals don't change, right? The goals of reduction don't change, but the ability to get there changes with different state policies, with evolution of technologies. And so it does really require some nimbleness to be able to take advantage of the different things that seem to be moving forward and how to push those even further. So, I'd be interested as you do the conversations with people that you not only ask them what their concerns are or what, actions they maybe have taken or what they'd want to do, but find out their awareness of certain of the technologies and perhaps some misconceptions that they have. Are they aware about induction cooktops or the problems with gas and its contribution to asthma and other home health issues? Are they, what do they know about electric vehicles? Do they have range anxiety? Are they aware of where there are charging, just like digging in on some of the topics a little bit further. I certainly appreciate the need for broad, but also on certain things, do they know what a heat pump is? What questions have they ever thought of? Do they know that there's a free home energy assessment that they can have so that it's partly not just information gathering, but also educational, and maybe even have some handouts to give them on topics if they're interested. But I think it's really, really great, and I do love, as Judith said, the more personal approach. I think that's going to be very productive for us. So thanks. John?
A short question. Iris mentioned the sunshine for solar panels, and I knew someone in Caroline years ago who had solar panels on an outbuilding, and he used to have this long-handled broom that after a snowfall, he would get the snow off the solar panels so they were more productive. And I'm wondering about these large solar farms. I know that's where I get most of my electric power from. Do they have any method of clearing snow?
It's a good question. I can say I'm not an expert in this. I know a lot of the solar farms out west nowadays, their issue isn't so much with snow as it is with dust. And so they'll have solar-powered, essentially machines that then are able to clean the panels themselves off the dust. And so I think if it were to be enough of a financial hit on the businesses around here, that they would find a way to make something like that work. My personal sense is that probably the amount of solar radiance in the winter is so low that the cost justification to get them to do something like that isn't quite there yet, because I've never seen something like that exist around here. But again, I'm not an expert in this.
But also the solar panels are black, and so they do attract the sun and kind of create a little bit of heat, and so it does melt off quickly. So that is kind of another piece of it.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think there's also concerns about scratching the panels, which reduces their ability to gather the sunlight and do their thing. So, but it could be, and again, I think Terry's point about whether there's enough sun in the winter to warrant the costs. But, you know, conceivably there could be heated panels developed. If it paid off, I would think that the industry would be doing it. I know that there are now in the industry in some areas where it pays off, there are panels that can track the sun and follow and move, but that uses some of the energy to move the panels, right? They actually consume some of the energy to do that, and so it is a trade-off as to how much solar energy they're gathering to begin with, as to whether some of these technologies are worthwhile.
Yeah, well, that's all it from our side,
Yeah,
so thank you.
I just realized one more. So in your talking with people about these issues, I wonder, do you have an eye towards also talking to businesses?
We're going to try and take a holistic approach. So we actually had a meeting with our whole department yesterday where we were talking about kind of the outreach strategy and different groups that we want to talk to and trying to lay it all out. And so we're trying to be pretty comprehensive of who we're trying to get to, but also being mindful that you can't reach everyone, right? As much as we would like to interview all 103,000 residents of Tompkins County, that's just not going to happen. And so trying to find ways to at least get some sort of representative viewpoint. But yes, we do want to hear from the commercial sector.
Yeah, and are there collaborations either with community partners like CCE or potentially Cornell? I mean, it seems like it could be a great student project. Are you envisioning that you'll have a team of volunteers to help with gathering data, or?
I don't know that that's the direction that we'll go towards, but I'll say within our department, there are always going to be some efforts around trying to do some other outreach. I know, so we have the housing plan that is going to be doing its own outreach as well. And so we're talking about like how we can cross-collaborate with that and we can work together and make sure that we're not, hosting a meeting and then hosting another meeting a week later trying to talk to the same group. And similarly, if we ever get the funding from the feds to do the hazard mitigation plan, that has a component of outreach as well. And so we'll be talking with Abigail actually to understand kind of how we can do this process in a way that would then be conducive to that planning process later on, hopefully in the next year or two.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you.
Anyone else? Anything else for Terry or Haley? Great, thanks. Thanks for this good presentation. All right, Katie still has not had a chance to give her commissioner's report. So department head, whatever it's called, commissioner report. Yes.
Thank you. It'll be quick. I wanted to update you that the NYSEG rate case has restarted its confidential settlement negotiations. So Haley and Terry are engaging in this process on behalf of the county. As it makes sense, they're focusing on the issues that they stated in their public testimony about keeping the Ithaca Walk-In Center open and addressing affordability. particularly including heat pump rates. And the timeline for these negotiations remains uncertain, but we will continue to provide updates as information becomes available. And if you have any specific questions, Haley, don't leave yet, because it's confidential. I don't even know what's going on in the negotiations.
Only if you have questions, though.
Okay, so thank you, Haley. So the second one, Terry alluded to, but we were recently requested by the New York State Department of Homeland Security and Emergency Services, otherwise known as DISHES, to submit additional information about a grant application that we had submitted in 2024 and again submitted in 2025 to try to obtain FEMA federal funding for updating our hazard mitigation plan. And this allows both the county to update its hazard mitigation plan and all of our municipalities to update what's called their annexes or their municipal specific plan. And this is important planning work to allow for attracting further funds to actually do the work to mitigate hazards. So if we receive the $160,000 award, we will be able to engage a consultant and launch that program as soon as we can. But just wanted to let you know that we submitted that information. It's the first movement, positive movement that we've had. So that's, we're really hoping it means that the funding will be available. That's it from me.
Does anyone have questions for Katie about her report? About anything else? All right. Well, Katie, you and your team certainly brought a lot this week, so thank you for all the work of everybody in the department.
Terry always does such a great job presenting, but I feel like I run a marathon every time he finishes his presentation.
All right, so now we'll move on to committee member reports. And I guess I'd like to see these committee member reports be reflections of the various committees that you're assigned to and what's happening in them, along with any other things that you have to report. So John, I saw your hand up.
Yes, I'm on the Tompkins County Soil and Water Conservation District team. And I just wanted to highlight one of the resolutions that came up at the last meeting on July 15th. It was called the resolution to enter into a contract with the Cayuga Lake Watershed Network to conduct best management practices and activities in the Cayuga Inlet Watershed. And it's the name of a farm that I can't pronounce either. This one starts with SCZ. So Skapansky or something like that farm. And this is the, right, they're awarding the Tompkins County Soil and Water District with a Friends of Cayuga Lake grant in the amount of $15,000 to support conservation project implementation to protect Cayuga Lake and its watershed from non-point sources of pollution, including but not limited to sediment and nutrient runoff. The grant agreement sets forth the terms of the grant. And skipping a few pages here to the summary of the project activity. Due to nutrient and sediment erosion runoff as a result of concentrated livestock, a livestock heavy use runoff. A covered heavy use a covered heavy use area will eliminate runoff potential of nutrients to the Middle Cayuga Inlet watershed. A 60-foot by 160-foot covered barnyard area is proposed to be installed with associated water areas, feed lanes, manure stacking area, clean water diversion from upstream runoff, and winter bedded pack area. This will allow the farm to progressively grow into a rotational grazing operation. Exclusion fencing will also be installed to keep cows out of sensitive streams and wet areas. And the covered use area will eliminate runoff potential of nutrients to the Middle Cayuga Inlet watershed. So that's basically what that resolution was about, which of course we passed.
Very good. Judith?
The Water Resources Council did not meet in July. We didn't have any pressing issues, but there is a planned meeting for WRC and EMC, Environmental Management Council members, to meet with Anna Kellis and her office to try to make sure that our issues are aligned with state issues and that we can make progress in the most effective way. So I'm looking forward to that in September, although I might not be able to attend the whole thing. We had another meeting of the Biosolids Working Group, which is aimed at trying to figure out what is happening to our biosolids, the solids left over from the wastewater treatment process. What is happening to them? Where are they going when they're shipped out of the county? Are there any biosolids being spread in the county? Are there biosolids being sold as fertilizer? We're still trying to track down some of these answers because there isn't a requirement that organizations publish this in an obvious way. But our belief is that our biosolids are being taken out of the county and put into landfills at this point. And that seems to align with the data that we've been able to access. We did have a wide-ranging discussion about the possibility of whether biosolids should actually be shipped to pyrolysis plants, which is where they're gasified and then burned for energy, which is a process that is believed to actually destroy most of the PFAS, if 99-point-something% of the PFAS that is in the biosolids. There was apparently some discussion about this some years ago at the Ithaca wastewater treatment plant, and it was determined that the material amounts were just not large enough to sustain a plant like that. But it was interesting to bring up that discussion and think about whether there's a different scope where that might make sense for our waste, whether it's in the county or outside the county, and it's something we're going to explore further. There's certainly some interest in the idea of destroying the PFAS rather than burying it in the ground and leaving it for future generations to deal with. But there's a lot of cost that would be associated with something like that, and you need a sustainable stream of waste, and we're not really on a major highway that would allow other people to ship their waste to us, and people might not want that anyway. So we talked about all those things, and I'm looking forward to seeing where it goes.
Cool. I was familiar with the conversations a few years ago about that, and it's interesting about the PFAS because one of the other risks with pyrolysis and creating biochar are the heavy metals, and to my knowledge, there's no way to pull those out of the biochar that's left after pyrolysis. So solve one problem and have another one that you have to figure out. But anyhow, it's great that that committee is so engaged and thinking so broadly. Anyone else for you guys on environment-related committees? Okay, Adam?
I am on 2 committees. Unfortunately, due to my new work schedule, I was unable to attend those meetings. I was at the Biosolids Working Group meeting. But yeah, I don't have much to report as a result.
Okay, can you let me know the meetings that you're not able to attend, and I'll see if I'm able to attend them?
Sure thing.
Okay, and that goes for any of you if you're like the only rep from our legislature on a committee. So I can report on a couple of committees that I've been to. One was the Planning Advisory Board, where many of the, all of the items that we just discussed today were discussed within, or at least the Finger Lakes Land Trust ones were discussed in that board. So you know the outcome of that. And the resolution that we voted on earlier with the farmland protection was considered on the Ag and Farmland Protection Board that I'm also liaison to. I also am the direct liaison to the case committee and which is Climate and Sustainable Energy Committee. And they had actually, at the express and interest of both Rachel and Adam, I asked them to give a presentation on public power. And so they gave a preliminary presentation on that. And it was very good. I mean, it was a very nice overview of public power. Where they want to go with it is to ask the county to potentially get involved in sponsoring a study to see whether it's feasible here to do that. And so I asked them to, before they came to us with that kind of request, to give a public power presentation to us, but that as compared to the presentation they gave at CASE, I wanted it to have a broader view, not just of, what's good about public power, but the challenges that are faced in implementing it, what's been tried elsewhere, and what works, what are the obstacles, what are the costs involved, and to, even if they could, to scope out a little bit what would be the cost of an implementation or a feasibility study. To, if they want to ask us to do that, I think we need to know a little bit more. I was aware of an initiative out in Rochester and Monroe County a few years ago that the city of Rochester put up $500,000, I think, for an implementation study, and we're looking for the county to put up, I forget if it was matching or 2 times that at $1 million, but it was going to be a lot of money to do a feasibility study. And so, I directed them to go back and dig in a bit more. I just didn't think it was ripe to give the presentation here yet without a bit more information and a more, robust picture of what's involved. Yeah, John?
I might have missed something, but what is public power?
It's, well, it's actually an interesting question. There are a lot of different ways of framing it, and one is just that a locality, municipality, county, whatever, owns the power generation, and it could be not just the municipality or county, but the state owns the sources of power. And then another version of it is that, again, whatever level of public ownership owns the grid system, the transmission, or not the transmission as much as the distribution of power within a given area. And so, whether it entails buying out the utility, building a separate system, it's a big picture and a big undertaking. And I think as more people get more and more frustrated with what's going on with our internationally owned utilities, they're looking for other solutions, and public power is one of them that takes the profit motive out and would bring back a lot of local control. Yeah, Judith?
It sounds very interesting, and thank you for asking them for this more in-depth approach, because, as you say, I think we need to have a sense of cost if we're going to even think about it, both for cost of getting a plan, the realistic perspective of is it something that people in other places have done? Is it something we could actually do? And I wanted to mention one of the things I've heard from people is a question of how come our power lines are up in the air instead of buried under the ground, which is something that when it's all run by NYSEG, it's hard to get an answer to that. But if it was under local control, it's something we could really dig into.
No pun intended.
In some hypothetical future, which has a rosy glow, but probably a lot of dollar signs attached.
Yeah, and actually burying lines is something that comes up not infrequently in rate case discussions. And there's quite a bit of cost to burying them and then to maintaining them. I mean, certainly there's costs, for storm damage and maintaining them above ground, but it's a whole different kind of project to figure out how do you monitor and manage their condition while they're underground. And so, usually it has to be built with certain kinds of conduit that prevent leakage and, blah, blah, blah. So it becomes a whole other piece. But
It was nice in Fort Collins, Colorado, that almost all of the power generation is buried lines, but it's a relatively flat area, and it's, it's an expanding area also. So as new areas are developed, it's just automatically, as they make streets and sidewalks and whatnot, they bury everything.
yeah, and it's a density issue as well. I mean, there are places within downtown Ithaca where lines are buried. But, you get out to Caroline where you have, maybe not even 5 houses per mile. That becomes really costly. So case will be meeting again next week, I think it is, on Thursday. And their agenda is they're continuing with strategic planning and kind of figuring out what are the issues that they want to focus in on. I think it's modeled after the work that's been done at the Environmental Management Council that took a lot of time last year, I think it was, to do some strategic planning, and it's really paid off. That committee is really much more focused and energized than I've seen in a long time, and it's kind of exciting. I'd love to see CASE move in that kind of direction as well. So that's it. Are there any other anythings that people need or want to raise before we adjourn? All right, well, seeing no other business before this committee, our meeting is adjourned. Thank you all for your attention.